This is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety's Disaster Discussions podcast, where we explore the intersection of weather and the built environment. Located in the heart of both Tornado and Hail Alley, Oklahoma homeowners face a unique and challenging environment characterized by frequent severe convective storms, including high winds, destructive hail, and tornadoes. This persistent risk contributes to some of the highest property insurance rates in the nation. According to a Forbes Advisor's analysis of the average homeowner's insurance cost by state, the average cost per year for a $500,000 home in Oklahoma comes in at $5,800, the highest in the nation and well above the national average of $2,500 per year. The Fortified Roof Program offers a proven solution for enhancing resilience against these threats using the Fortified Home High Wind designation with the Hail Supplement. As of the start of this year, the Strengthen Oklahoma Homes program is helping homeowners do just that, providing grants of up to $10,000 for homeowners to upgrade to fortified roofs, making homes more resilient and reducing insurance premiums in the process. Joining us today is Scott McCollum, Senior Fortified Contractor and Master Hague Certified Inspector with McRoof.us out of Edmond, Oklahoma. Welcome to Disaster Discussions.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
So you have a long list of credentials in addition to just those couple that I named. Tell me a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Well, you know, as my daughter says, I used to say I'm old fashioned. She says, "Dad, you're just old." So I've got a decade or so in the commercial insurance space, including property insurance and workers' compensation. So that's kind of where I started. Piled on top of that, about 4 decades in commercial and residential construction of just about every type, significant whole house remodeling type things, multi-million-dollar projects. And then on top of that, now have piled on another 10, 12, 15 years of specifically being in the insurance restoration space in Oklahoma. So kind of a lot of experience in and around the whole issue that we're here today to talk about.
Yeah, and it kind of got the chance to look at your website a bit. You guys, the McRoof team, a really unique combination of expertise. It sounds like you've done a variety of things in your career, but you don't often go to the same place for both a new roof and expect to meet an insurance expert. So tell me about McRoof. And I hear you have your very own podcast, McRoof Fortifies Oklahoma, or your own radio show. Tell me a little bit about both of those.
So about McRoof specifically, what we wanted to do when we decided to get out of the general contracting space and into the roofing space, we wanted to differentiate ourselves from the majority of people in the marketplace with technical competency, with that education, the credentials. All of my people in McRoof are highly credentialed. The solutions team, what we call our sales team, they're all Hague credentialed inspectors. So when they get on a roof, they're looking at it from the standpoint of not just trying to sell someone a roof, but they're looking at it from the standpoint of, what is the truth on this roof? What does the information we're gathering tell us? What is the logical conclusion for this client or prospect to draw from this? And let's head them in the direction of a solution for them. So that's kind of where we come from. My team does not, they do get paid commissions like most roofing people do, but they're compensated on a base salary and benefits basis to create solutions for my clients. And that's really what they're there for. So they're not there to make a big sale to line their own pocket. They're there to solve a problem for a client, to deepen a relationship, and to look at things from the standpoint of, we intend to be in relationship with this client for the rest of our lives. And that's kind of the way we look at it. That's the way we treat our clients. That's the way we value them. And that's what truly makes McRoof different from most roofing contractors in the space. So,
as of this
in doing that, with the deep experience and the technical competency that leads us to a place where we kind of know a lot about what building better should look like. We know a lot about things like systems roofs. We know a lot about things like building codes and building beyond building codes. So we educate our clients around those things, and we try to move our clients in the direction of moving away from what the insurance throws at them, moving away from what the roofing industry throws at them, of kind of everything being about cost. We try to move it into the conversations about what's the true value. And in our world, the value comes down to very, very simple things. It's saving lives, protecting property, and mitigating risk. And that's what we do in our space. That's how we go to market. That's what we do in the representation for a client with an insurance carrier, making sure that we get to a positive outcome for everybody involved. That's what McRoof Fortifies Oklahoma radio program and podcast are all about. We're trying to spread the good news. Okay. Literally, we're trying to shout it from the rooftops, use the microphone every Saturday to make sure that people know that there are people in the marketplace that know how to build better roofs. There are people in the marketplace that know how to fortify. There are people in the marketplace that know how to do just what we said, save lives and protect property. And that's what everyone in the heartland should be doing. Consumers should be buying that. Contractors should be offering that. And everyone that's in the space, from insurance carriers to regulators and legislators and contractors, should all be talking about the exact same thing. Let's mitigate risk together. We'll lower insurance premiums, but what we'll really do, we'll save lives and protect property.
That's awesome. I mean, you basically just talked about the IBHS mission, and that's our mission to reduce what we believe is avoidable suffering and avoidable property damage by building more resilient roofs. So a lot of what you're saying sounds very familiar to me, and I love that concept that value is not just a price or a number. It goes much further than that.
That's right.
So I have to ask, how did you first hear about the Fortified program, and how did you become, such a big proponent of it?
Well, it's kind of funny because I've always been about building systems, and I happen to be a certainteed only contractor. I have always, when I got into the roofing space, we made that decision. We made the decision that we didn't want to be like everybody else. I don't want to get up today and say, okay, what kind of roof am I building today? We wanted to know what we were going to do. We wanted to know why we were doing it that way, what the benefits of that were. It gave us a repeatable process. It made it easy for us to train our people. It made it easy for us to train our crews. We live in a subcontractor world in this part of the country. Very, very difficult to manage that. So if you do one thing the same way every single day, then it gets much, much easier. And so we were always systems builder, building what's called certainteed integrity roof system. I'll tell everyone that I don't care what manufacturer's product you put on. If you will use a major manufacturer's product with a credentialed contractor, install it as it is supposed to be installed, and use all of their products in their system as prescribed, you will have a better roof than using someone that is going to buy cats and dogs and put them on your roof. In other words, they're going to use one company's starter, and one company's underlayment, one company's ice and water, one company's ventilation, and one company's shingle. And they're doing it really, that comes from the mentality of, I call it rubbing two nickels together to make a dime. All right. That's where the contractor goes, well, I can use a cheaper underlayment, or I can use a cheaper ice and water, or I can use a cheaper ventilation, or I can use a cheaper starter. That's not what systems and building better are all about. Systems and building better are about driving value on the backside in the performance of what you're building. So that's where we play. So we are always doing systems roofs. I tell people that I've been fortifying Oklahoma, even though I didn't know I was doing it. I've been fortifying Oklahoma ever since the first roof that I put on, because when I came to Oklahoma, I said, number one, every roof I do will be a systems roof. Number two, every roof I do, every client or every prospect that we see as a company will be educated about the benefits of class 4 impact resistant technology. At the time, that was the old scrim technology, which those were workhorse shingles. I nailed thousands and thousands and thousands in Oklahoma and replaced a handful of them over, 8 or 10 years. But technology changes, building science changes, you get more and more information. At some point, that information that's coming to you is overwhelming if you're paying attention. All right. So in about 2017, I started noticing this thing called SBS, Modified Flex Technology Asphalt Shingles. And I started paying a lot of attention to all the testing results and everything that was coming back. And I noticed that in the event of severe hail, all right, very severe hail, that the Flex technology, the modified SBS, was going to outperform my Scrim technology shingle that I've been using forever and very, very proudly so, was going to outperform that by somewhere between 30 and 40%, all right, in terms of its resistance to damage from that hail. Okay, being a best practices, being a building science guy, building the best roof I know how to build, I owe it to my clients to show them that new technology. So in 2017, McRoof was the first company that started installing SBS modified Landmark and Climate Flex shingles, Northgate Climate Flex in Oklahoma. And I've been installing that shingle since 2017. I have never replaced one for hail damage. Now, I replaced one of those roofs because a tornado blew up the neighbor's house, scoured my roof, punctured the decking, and tore the shingles up. So we replaced one modified SBS shingle roof out of all the thousands that we built in Oklahoma. We've seen winds over 100 miles an hour, and we've seen hail up to about 5.5 inches. Now, that is not a fortified roof. And I had heard about fortified. I had looked at fortified, and I'm thinking, if we want to get serious about this, we need to really get into fortified, see what it is, understand it, figure out what's the cost difference in building a fortified roof versus one of my systems roofs that I'm already, because I've already got a lot of the elements of fortified are already in my systems roof. I've already got a premium underlayment and a premium starter. I've already got a premium shingle, something that would meet the fortified standard for hail designation. What I didn't have is I didn't have the deck attachment. And I didn't have the deck ceiling, all right? And I didn't have the way that the underlayment was nailed and attached. I didn't have the drip edge detail with the lock it in concept. So those things were missing, and those things were really simple steps to go to fortified from where I already was. So it wasn't a huge leap. So then I start going, okay, I've already sold my clients a better roof. They're already coming out of pocket for that upgrade, and now I have to put something else on top of it. So I literally have to be able to tell them what that costs. So I go through and I look at the cost of the shingles isn't a factor to us because it was already going to be on a roof anyway. All right. The cost of the underlayment isn't a factor because it was already going to be on a roof anyway. So my costs really come down to how much do the ring shake nails cost me? All right. How much does the zip tape or the certainty seam tape cost me? How much are the additional cap nails in my underlayment going to cost me? How much is a little bit better drip edge going to cost me? All right. How much is a self-adhered starter going to cost me? And how much is my labor contractor going to charge me additionally for doing all of these things to fill the prescription that is fortified? All right. So I've got all that down. I know exactly how much it costs me, and I know exactly what I have to tell my clients that it's going to cost them. And that is something that when we get to the conversation about cost, I always say to people, you're making decisions based on the check that you're going to write. And I understand that everybody has a budget. I don't care how many zeros it has on the end of it. Everybody has a budget. I understand that. But before you decide that that's what you're willing to invest in this, I want you to consider the aspects of what did we talk about at the top of the show? Saving lives and protecting property. What is it worth to you for that additional security and protection that you're going to provide for your family, for everything in your home, for everything that you love and care about? What is it worth to you to know that up to that high EF2 tornado, you're probably not going to be displaced from your home? You may have a little bit of damage. You may need a new roof, but you're not going to be mitigating all the water damage, the mold damage, everything else that goes on. You're not going to be having to rent a house for 6 months. You're probably not going to be having to do that. And that is in this part of the country, when we know that tornadoes are real, we know that hail is real. Those are things that people really need to be thinking about.
And I'm curious, what kind of homeowner response do you hear when you ask those questions? And do you often encounter any clients who have been displaced and who have had to get out of their homes because of a tornado or some other severe weather event? You being in the heart of Tornado Alley and Hail Alley, what type of feedback do you hear from homeowners when you really pitch it like that?
Well, I'll tell you, the people who have been through that experience, the people that have been on the worst ends of that, who have seen it and lived it themselves, they're seeking us out. Okay. We're not really having to get them to drink the Kool-Aid. They already know about this stuff. They've gone for the most part. They've done their research. They've tried to figure out what's better. What can we do to keep from being in the same boat that we've generally been in the past? There's got to be something better. I think that's where we're at right now in the marketplace. I think it's really interesting and very timely that IBHS is specifically focused on that push inland right now. I think that is perfect from the standpoint of, number one, you've had the severe convective storms escalating in numbers every single year for the last decade or so. You've had the movement or the migration to the south and to the east from the traditional, hail belt and tornado alley, which quite unfortunately gets people into the nighttime storms in Alabama and Mississippi, Tennessee, places like that. So that's a really bad thing. You've had the successes in Alabama and Louisiana and places like that people in surrounding states are paying attention to and understanding, something's going on over here. It makes a lot of sense. I was talking to an evaluator friend of mine in Alabama a week or two ago, and he said, Scott, when we started, there were, as it is in Oklahoma, there were a handful of fortified contractors. And now he said, quite honestly, 15 years later in Alabama, he says, if you're not a fortified roofing contractor in Alabama, you're not a roofing contractor in Alabama, because very, very few consumers would even talk to you if you couldn't offer that to them. And that's where we need to go. That's where we have to go. That's why programs like this are so important. Getting the word out, and we've got our OID here working hard. We've got the legislature in Oklahoma working hard. We've got a roofing contractors association here in Oklahoma that is committed to building better. Doing the things that I'm passionate about, that's saving lives and protecting property. All of these folks are people that we all need to collaborate. If the messaging coming to consumers from the insurance industry, all right, which is, hey, this is really, really difficult space right now because of the severe convective storms. We've got to do something to mitigate risk. Insureds understand that. They're getting that message. They're seeing the higher premiums. They're seeing the reduced coverages. They're seeing the more restrictive payouts, all those kinds of things. They understand this is where it has to be. So now it's the idea that we have to tell them how. What's the vehicle? How do you go about doing that? And then they can start to make those choices to where they're moving into that place where insurance, contractors, everyone involved working with the consumers, we're all mitigating risk together. And when we do that, then we're going to have a very positive outcome for everybody involved. So
we can't stop wildfire, but there is a pathway to better protect your home. I'm Steve Hawk, Senior Director for Wildfire at IBHS. If you live in areas at risk of wildfire, consider building or retrofitting your home using our Wildfire Prepared Home Standard. It addresses ways you can make your home more resilient to wildfire by creating a 5-foot non-combustible zone and preparing your home's exterior to help break the pathways of fire spread. Visit wildfireprepared.org to learn how to protect your home and apply for a Wildfire Prepared Home designation.
You and I we had the chance to meet recently at the Southern Climate Impacts Planning Program, or SCIP, Hazard Resilient Buildings Workshop. That was held at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. So a lot of those partners that you mentioned, folks in the insurance industry, builders, contractors, realtors, all sorts of folks came together for this workshop. And that's where we had the chance to meet. So you gave a great presentation at that workshop called A Roofing Practitioner's Perspective on What Works and What Doesn't. And I want to get into some of the things you talked about in that presentation. You kind of started out by saying, we have to turn the conversations to saving lives and protecting property instead of building structures, home and roofs. You've already talked a lot about that today,
right.
And kind of how you came to this realization. But you said in the presentation, we can't do anything about the weather, but we can adjust some attitudes. And you kind of gave 4 different mindsets that we need to look at and sort of embrace to help grow this Fortified program in Oklahoma. So I want to get into some of those. You start with the consumer mindset. Sounds like you're having a lot of success with your customers, but for those that are apprehensive, about the whole systems-based roof approach, what is the consumer mindset that we can improve upon and message for?
Well, I think the consistent thing that I've heard over, 16, 17 years now in Oklahoma, it's just a roof, which to me that's one of the most nonsensical things that anyone could ever say. A roof is only the second most important system in any structure, and it's the number one weather shedding system in every structure. So to say it's just a roof, that in and of itself is kind of silly. The other thing that I hear consistently is, another storm is coming, so why should I invest in building better? Well, that was followed by, the insurance company's going to pay for it. Well, that ship has kind of sailed. I think people are understanding that as we move forward over time, I can't tell you how much your insurance premium is going to cost you. I can't tell you what your coverage is going to be. But I can tell you that every single day that goes by, when it comes time for you to write a check for your participation in the replacement of a roof, it will be larger than it was today. And that's just the reality of it. Obviously, inflation plays a role in that, the escalating costs and things. But the other thing that's going to play a place in it is that deductibles are going to go up. Coverages are going to go down. That hole is going to become larger and larger. And that's a place where consumers are going to have to write the check. Well, you can write the check when you're in that position of having had a severe loss, catastrophic loss, or you can begin to mitigate risk today in what you do on your property. And I've told people for years, there's going to come a point in time, and we're getting very close to it now. I've said for years, there's going to come a point in time where if you have the opportunity to replace your roof, the insurance carrier is paying for it, and you choose not to build better. You choose not to put a class 4 impact resistant roof on it, or to do something to show the carrier that you are mitigating risk. There's going to come a time where you will not be able to obtain or afford insurance on your roof. And it's happening right now. It's becoming more and more real every single day. So the idea that the insurance company is going to pay for it, the real answer to that is no, they're not. They're going to pay for it on a very discounted basis to what they have traditionally, or what people think that insurance is going to pay on a roof. I equate it in a lot of ways. It's kind of what people are finding as a result of the wildfires. this past year or two. And the hole that's created in terms of this is all the coverage they can buy. Well, if you've got $1.5 million house and you can only buy $700,000 worth of coverage, you've got an $800,000 hole that you have to fill. Well, on a roof, in case of a roof deductible, not having code coverage, not having barring or metal exclusions or all the different things that come into it, or by having a roof payment schedule that reduces your payments or ACV. It's not like that kind of a hole, but it's still a hole. And people have to understand it's there. And why don't we take a little bit of money right now and let's improve the roof we're getting ready to put on here, mitigate risk for our carrier. Hopefully they'll give us a lower deductible, give us better coverage provisions. And when a storm comes around, chances are we're not going to have to replace our roof when all our neighbors are, so we don't incur another deductible. We don't take another black mark on our insurance history report, things like that. That's the way people need to start thinking about that.
Yeah, I want to say in your presentation, did you compare consumer mindset to when you go out and buy a new car or go out and buy a new suit? Was that your presentation who said, when you go out and buy a car, you go out and buy a suit, you don't say, oh, just give me your lowest model. You want to look good, or you want to drive a safe car.
I said that. And that's kind of that dumbing it down about it's just a roof. And I said, well, when you go out to buy a car, do you go in and tell the salesman, hey, just show me the cheapest one you've got? And maybe some people do. I understand. Okay. But that for most folks, that's not what most of us want. And when you put it in terms of, again, that saving lives, protecting property, when we're talking about their family and we're talking about everything that they hold dear to them, they certainly aren't going to say, give me the cheapest one you've got. That's just not what the answer is going to be from most people.
Exactly. Thinking down the line on that return on investment.
Yeah.
So you also talked about contractor mindset. And one of the questions you asked surrounding that is, why should I build better? What do we need to adjust about contractor attitudes?
Well, and this is one of my favorites because obviously, I throw my industry under the bus a lot. There's a lot of things about my industry that are a little distasteful to me. And, I work really hard with the executive director of Oklahoma Roofing Contractors Association. We're trying to change some of these attitudes. We're trying to educate people and bring them into the realities of what everyone is facing with these severe convective storms. And the people that are pushing IBHS FORTIFIED away, and the people that are pushing systems roofs away, and the people that, I just need to keep nailing 3-tab shingles and things like that. The reality of it is I don't honestly believe they have a long future in the business. I believe that consumers are going to be forced to change, if nothing else, from the insurance, the pressure from the insurance carriers. I think they're going to be forced to change. Their attitudes and mindsets are going to have to be about better. A lot of these contractors don't know how to do that. The contractors say, why should I build better? Because then I'm not going to get to replace it as frequently. All right. When I came to Oklahoma, one of my first trips to Western Oklahoma, which is, you can imagine, wide open plains and wind blowing and all that, and I'm sitting there, and every little small town lumber yard I drove by had a huge inventory of 3-tab shingles. Okay. And a 3-tab shingle, for people who don't know, that's the starter in asphalt shingle world. That's a thin shingle. It is a lightweight shingle. It's a shingle that comes out of the wrapper with a 60-mile-an-hour wind warranty. And I'm going to myself, why in the world would you even nail a shingle in Oklahoma with a 60-mile-an-hour? That's a nice calm day around here in the springtime. And believe me, they don't even perform up to 60 miles an hour. They fail much, much lower wind speeds than that. So, but I've stood up in front of an Orca group, talked about the fact that I'd been installing these Certainty Northgate Flex Technology shingles since 2017. I'd never replaced one for hail damage, and had a guy in the back of the room stand up and literally said, as a roofing contractor, why in the world would I want to do that? I want to make sure that every one of my roofs gets replaced before it turns 10 years old, so that it doesn't go to an ACV policy and I have to fight that battle with the homeowner because they're having to come out of pocket with a lot of money. That's the attitude of the roofing industry. A lot of times we see where, well, instead of showing a client, instead of educating the client, instead of teaching a client what they should have, what they could do, showing them a different universe, it's, oh, we'll just do exactly what you've got right now. Well, what you've got right now is a non-code compliant roof, all right, a poorly ventilated roof, probably not a systems roof, and probably an improperly installed roof. That's what you've got right now. And that's what the contractor just told you he's going to do for you. I'm going to give you just what you got right now. And you signed on the bottom line. You have nobody to blame but yourself. But that's the contractors who want to just do what they've always done. And they're always looking at their own pocketbook instead of looking at what they really owe the consuming marketplace. So that's where that comes.
And I think you told a story at the workshop about driving into a town not long after a storm had finished. And I want to say you talked about a church that was either damaged or undamaged next to another building. And I know the undamaged building, whichever one it was that you were talking about, you said it stood out to you. And do you recall that story? Am I getting that right?
Well, so the story is from 2019, and this is not a fortified roof, but this is what I would call an integrity roof system on steroids. Okay, this was like redundancy to the nth degree in a lot of different ways on this roof that I was actually building. So the story is, it's about 100 miles away. I pull home, go in, just get my feet up and look at the TV, and here's the weather rolling into Southwest Oklahoma. And I said, oh my gosh, I have a roof that's dried in theoretically. Okay. But there's not a shingle on it. There's, it's ice and water, and it's synthetic underlayment and flashings, that's what it is. And they've flown every airplane off of the Air Force Base. That's how severe the storm was going to be. So I turn around and head back down there, and I get there going into town. All the little Morgan portable buildings are blown over in the middle of the highway. The Holiday Inn across the highway, the roof is laying in the parking lot. And I'm going, this is a finished roof, and it's laying in the parking lot. And I turn the corner and I get to this roof just as the pastor is sticking his key in the door to walk in. And he looks at me and says, how's it going to be? And I said, I think it's going to be just fine. He said, really? I said, yeah. We walked in and we went in through the entire facility. And the only place that had water were the 4 mechanical rooms. They were concrete floors with drains in them because all of the vent caps had blown off. It was 94 mile an hour winds. All right. And about 7.5 inches of rain in about an hour and a half. All right. I mean, it was a storm. And we went through this entire facility. There was not a drop of water anywhere. Well, I had redundant systems. I had 2 layers of synthetic underlayment. I had 2 courses of underlayment at the entire perimeter, all the way. I mean, ice and water all the way around this building. I had 3 courses of ice and water in all the valleys. In other words, everything was done to the nth degree. The underlayment was nailed according to certain TEEDS requirements, which FORTIFIEDs would be even more than that, which was a plastic cap ring shank nail in every diamond on the diamond deck, which is not a foot apart like IBHS FORTIFIED would be. So a fortified roof would have even been more protection. But the long and the short of it is that we build redundant roof systems. We do it for a reason. We do it to where if one thing fails, that something else is there to protect you. And in this particular case, with 2 layers of synthetic underlayment on there, if that first layer had come off, we still would not have had much water, if any, in that building. Same idea with you guys with IBHS Fortified. If we lose the roof covering, if we lose the shingles, we lose the metal cladding, we lose the wood shake, whatever it is, if we lose that, and even if we lose some of the underlayment, which I'm not really sure how that happens with the way that we attach it and lock it in, but if we did, we still have the deck nailed down, we still have the deck taped. So the point is that we're going to mitigate 70 to 80% of the potential insured loss regardless of that. But systems roofs perform, and they perform in a way that is predictable. Certainty and integrity roof system performance is predictable. A fortified performance is predictable. We know that when we've got these high wind events, when we've got these tornadoes, we know that we've got a tornado. Everyone remembers the Moore tornado, as such a devastating storm, and it was. Everyone remembers that as being an EF5 tornado. There was a small nucleus in that storm swath that was EF5. There was a huge portion of that storm path that was EF0 and EF1. And up to high-end EF2 tornadoes with Fortified installed the way it's supposed to be installed, we're going to mitigate that 70 to 80% of that risk for that client. And that's just Fortified roof. That's not even getting into the fortified home and getting into the garage doors and the glazings and all of those kinds of things. Just with the roof, we're going to mitigate 70 to 80% of that insured loss. So anyway.
Yeah, exactly. No, we show a photo of the Moore, Oklahoma tornado path in a lot of our presentations when we are talking about Fortified. And, you see the leveled houses that experience the EF5 damage or maybe the EF4, but then you zoom out and see the outer fringes of that path where the damage becomes, less and less as you go to those lower wind speeds. And you're right. I mean, we can shave off a lot of those losses, significant amount of those losses on the fringes of the path, which is even in the strongest storms. That's where we see the majority of the damage.
Well, I can think in the Moore tornado specifically, I know that I replaced a number of roofs that would have been in that EF0, EF1, path. And I wouldn't have been replacing any of those roofs if those roofs had been fortified. Now, quite honestly, this is the way that it works, is that communities respond to their experiences, and the city of Moore has responded to their experience. City of Moore representatives were in the conference or in the forum that you referred to, and I'm actually going this afternoon to have another meeting with them about how we can even go further and further and further. City of Moore is now requiring fortified deck nailing. Okay. And they're requiring the underlayments to be nailed according to the fortified requirements. They're not requiring deck sealing yet. That might be the next thing that they might consider doing. Or maybe we'll talk today a little bit about locking it in. Quite honestly, that locking it in is really a building code thing. That if the contractors in Oklahoma were even aware of and were doing what they're supposed to be doing, that would already be taken care of. Other than your 4-inch nailing on a staggered pattern. But other than that, the rest of it, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of people rely on building codes and building inspectors. They don't understand that roofs have never been inspected in Oklahoma. Okay. So even though it's in the building code, and even though you're building a house, and even though your contractor has a permit, no one has ever inspected your roof. All right. And there are a lot of things about how a roof is supposed to be built in the International Residential Code that is not being done in Oklahoma or anywhere else for that matter. So.
Yeah, and that's really a key differentiator of the Fortified program is, for those who aren't familiar, throughout that process, the whole process is being documented by the Fortified evaluator. There's photos being taken, and it goes back to what you've mentioned several times is, just in making sure things are installed correctly, whether that's the Fortified standard or the manufacturer's recommendations. Fortified team loves to say you get what you inspect, not what you expect.
Right, right.
So making sure things are done right. And you're right, some states may have stronger building codes, but if they're not being enforced and uniformly inspected, they're not doing as much good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, what are the local adoptions of the building code? In Oklahoma, theoretically, we have one building code. That's the building code that's adopted by the Oklahoma Uniform Building Code Commission. That is what is approved by the legislature. That is supposed to be the building code in the state of Oklahoma. When every contractor who is regulated by the Construction Industries Board applies for their license or registration, they sign an affidavit that basically is saying that they understand those codes and that is the standard of installation for whatever their trade is, whether it's roofing or electrical or plumbing or mechanical or whatever. Most owners of those companies don't understand that.
Yeah, that was a key part of the Hurricane Sally study that came out earlier this year that I think you mentioned earlier. When we compare the fortified homes to the homes built to the local code in coastal Alabama, which is very strong, right, the fortified homes still outperformed the code homes by more than 50%.
Right. The evaluator piece of it for fortified, and that's the thing that's really a lot of people don't understand the evaluator's role. Not really. There's some cloudiness in the marketplace about this. Something we need to do a little bit more education about for the consuming public, I think. But the evaluator really is the one that has to, package all this up and make sure that it goes to the audit team and that they have what they need at IBHS to be able to see that everything was done the way that it's supposed to be done. And what some people don't understand, though, is they think that the evaluator is responsible for making sure their roof gets built correctly. That is actually not correct. The evaluator is there as a guide. The evaluator is there to kind of look over the shoulder and let the contractor know. What we do as if I'm an evaluator, we're looking at the photos that are being sent to us by the contractor throughout the installation. And we're looking for every little thing because what I tell people is this is a prescription. The doctor has written the prescription. You as the pharmacist don't get to decide what you are and aren't going to do, or you don't get to decide to use a generic, or you don't get to decide that 12 nails in a 48-inch width of a sheet of OSB is enough instead of 13. You don't get to decide those kinds of things, and every step of this has to be documented and photographed in such a way that we've got the evidence that it's being done correctly. And, the evaluator plays an important role.
I love that analogy of the pharmacist and the doctor there.
Hey there, Dr. Ann Cope, Chief Engineer for IBHS. What is the best roof? That's a question we get asked a lot here at IBHS, and the answer is complicated because it depends a lot on where you live. Roofs should stand up to everyday thunderstorms and limit the damage from oncoming hurricanes. With our Roofing Roadmap strategic initiative, we're making the IBHS science about weather and roof performance available for you. Visit ibhs.org/roofing roadmaps and take our Roof 101 course right now to learn about asphalt shingles, America's most popular roof cover. How well does your shingle roof stand up to wind and hail? What do you need to know about roofs? Get the science at your fingertips today, ibhs.org.
So getting back to the last two mindsets, you also talked about, sorry, I went off topic a little bit, but going back to the adjuster mindset, you talked about playing by the rules written by the character, and some other things as well. What are attitudes need to be adjusted when it comes to the adjuster's mindset?
Well, and I'm not gonna beat on adjusters, and I'm not gonna beat on insurance carriers. What I am gonna say is that this used to be a collaboration. This used to be a situation where, I or one of my folks would show up, to meet an adjuster for an inspection. The adjuster and I or my folks understand that we have a mutual client. We're here for the benefit of that mutual client. We have duties. We as a company, McRoof understands we have duties to the client. We have duties to the carrier. Our job is what I describe as the edge of the coin. Our job is to keep that coin standing on its edge. Our job is to work to make sure that we ethically and honestly portray, demonstrate, illustrate, point out all of the damage, storm-related damage that we see that exists on that property so the adjuster is aware of it. And then it's our job to make sure that it is paid for according to the market rates and then everything's done the way it's supposed to be done. We are not, and we tell lots of people this, hey, if you expect me to put you want your house painted and you want your garage door that your kids ran into with the bicycle and you want all that kind of stuff included in your claim, it's not going to happen. All right. Call somebody else who can do that for you because that's not what we do. It used to be that when we met on a job site, we met an adjuster. We don't meet adjusters very much anymore. There are very few adjusters left in the field. There are inspectors left in the field. All right. And a lot of them are fairly inexperienced, what I call the old salts, the guys and gals that really knew storm damage, particularly in the Hail Belt Tornado Alley. They knew what storm damage was. The insurance companies kind of decided that they could do it a cheaper way. A lot of those folks, went someplace else, work the insurance carriers anymore. So the attitude that we get is more of a gnashing of teeth and a confrontational type thing instead of the attitude of we're here to work together to resolve this to the benefit of our mutual client. And that's where we need to get back to. I think there is an attitude on the part of the adjusters that there's not really much I can do about it because the desk adjuster is going to make the decision anyway. I don't really have any authority. I'm just here to take pictures and to document. And then there's the attitude that regardless of what happens, the insured really isn't going to know what to do to come back at us to defend a different position. So those are attitudes from an adjuster standpoint. From a carrier standpoint, we get a lot of kicking the can down the road. And I've had these conversations in boardrooms and in any number of venues with insurance carriers themselves. This idea of delaying these things and I have a claim right now, and this is because it's current, it's fresh in my mind. I have a claim right now that the insured had a public adjuster. The public adjuster ended up walking away from the deal because he couldn't get anything done. She came to us through the FORTIFIED because she wanted to build FORTIFIED, so she found us as a contractor, and we started working on her claim. Her claim is her roof has been photographed, it's been documented. There are hundreds of photographs. I've been sent in over my credentials, which is more than what you talked about at the start, including my public adjuster credential, license number, and my Hague credentials and some other credentials in the roofing space with my signature on it. And the desk adjuster, who probably could not spell roof, sent back to us an email that says, there's no hail damage in the photos that you sent us. And I have literally drawn red circles around hundreds of obvious hail hits on this roof. That's what I'm talking about quit kicking the can down the road. That's where the insurance carriers end up with consumers getting frustrated and hiring public adjusters and hiring attorneys and things like that. Let's just do our job the first time. And let's just pay legitimate claims fairly and equitably the way that we should pay them. And we won't have to worry about all that other stuff. It's a lot better for everybody involved. So the other attitude on the carrier's part is that all contractors are crooks. I know where that comes from. I'll just say that a fair number of them probably are, but not all of them. And I just hate. I hate getting thrown under that bus with everybody else because we literally are the edge of the coin. I'll say it. to every adjuster and insurance carrier's face, I have never asked an insurance carrier to pay one dime that I didn't know that they owed for storm damage. And that's how we do business. So.
All right. Well, really interesting mindsets. I love how you kind of hit on each one of those. And certainly we're doing a lot right and some things to work on as well. I want to talk more about the Fortified grant program in Oklahoma and kind of just the future of the Fortified program there. Like we've talked about today, historically, IBHS is focused on really growing Fortified on the hurricane coast, but it's those severe convective storms that are the biggest driver of those insured losses across the country, hail accounting for the majority of that. So part of our strategy 2026 at IBHS is to expand more into those inland states. So we often see Fortified enter the market in a state, but until we see those financial incentives involved for consumers, we usually see pretty slow growth at the start. And then we start to see an uptick in activity once grant programs are put into place. So this is the first year that the Oklahoma Department of Insurance, they launched 3 pilot programs of the Strengthen Oklahoma Homes program. First, they rolled them out to the top 25 zip codes by mean paid loss ratio from 2018 to 2022. Today, the grants are available in any of Oklahoma's 77 counties. As of our meeting in early October, there were 46 homes that had received that grant with about close to $500,000 in grants paid, 339 more applications in process, several hundred more applications available. So talking about those insurance discounts, insurers are offering discounts ranging from 3 to 42% off the wind portion of those homeowners insurance premiums. Homeowners saving an average of $730 per year, according to OID. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, what are you hearing from homeowners about, these insurance savings they're experiencing?
Well, I think we're in a transition period. I think that the Fortified discounts have not caught up necessarily with where we need to be. I have some clients that tell me my Fortified discount is less than I used to get for my Class 4 IR discount. So that doesn't make any sense at all. So there are some things like that. I don't know. I haven't been able to find anyone who's received the 42%. I'm not sure who that is. I'm hearing of the discounts more in the 25 to 30% range. I could just tell you that if I were an insurance carrier, I would be looking for these roofs and I would be rewarding these people because as far as I'm concerned, you've got as good a risk on your books as you could possibly have from the standpoint of roof anyway. So there's some more work to be done there. I don't know. I don't know how many roofs we built now, a month or so later, but I do know that McRoof has built a significant percentage of the roofs that have been built in the grant program. The reason for that, or one of the reasons for that, is that I made it very well known that, it's my intention to lead with Fortified. We used to do good, better, best in terms of how we presented roof packages to our clients. Well, now we're doing good, better, best, but it's good, better, best Fortified. All right. So now we're actually leading with, we have some shingles in there that are a little less expensive that are approved for the high wind with the hail designation for Fortified, particularly on that new list that just came out November 1st. So we now have a good option there for people that are a little bit more dollar sensitive. And then we obviously have some things, and we're moving towards some luxury offerings, some slate looks and some things like that. I've got a huge roof right now that we're kind of waiting on some more information to come from you guys so that I know how to bid that roof. But that's where we're at. I think that I would like to see Fortified become, I believe Fortified should be the way that all roofs are built in Oklahoma, certainly in the Hail Belt and Tornado Alley. That's what my intention is. I'm on the technical review committee for the International Residential Code for Oklahoma Uniform Building Code Commission. And I'm going to push every cycle to get as much fortified stuff in there as I possibly can. As I said, working with the city of Moore, the city of Shawnee, the city of Oklahoma City, kind of, again, it's sad that we have to have the events that we have to kind of make this top of people's mind. But the reality of it is that the city of Moore is leading the way, and we need to be able to take their model and keep pushing it forward, get further and further and further into full adoption of fortified. And then we can take that and we can go to these other cities and places and get them to do the same thing. It's unfortunate that the resistance that we get when we're in code council, when we're in technical review committee, or when OUBCC is trying to get the legislation approved, a lot of what comes back is all centered around the cost of building things better. All right. And it's something that we've got to address. I think that people need to understand how that works. If technical review committee is meeting to talk about Chapter 9 roofing, and you know that there's going to be a group of maybe the building community there talking about not making things better, and you're a consumer that believes that a lot of the things that need to be made better are in the consumer's best interest, then you need to be standing at the podium voicing your opinions on the matter so that the committee has a balanced view of what's going on. If you're not there, if no consumers there, if there's no one there who is talking in favor of strengthening all these codes, and there's a whole lot of people there talking about dumbing them down and keeping them where they're at, or even rolling some things back, guess what's going to happen? So again, everybody likes to talk about what the problems are. Very few people want to get engaged in the process and be a part of the solution. That's what being a part of the solution is. This is letting people hear your voice.
Exactly. And when it comes to the code perspective, codes are the long game, and we're a big proponent of strengthening building codes. But we're glad that we're able to put our science, into programs like Fortified and systems roofs, and bring it to the consumers now, despite,
Right.
Irregardless of what happens with the codes.
Yeah. Well, and the code cycles, that's a 3-year cycle, number one. And then you've got, typically, then you've got legislative action the year after that. And then by the time anything actually rolls out to where, we're still, looking at 2018 IRC in Oklahoma. And we're in 2025 right now. So it's always behind the 8 ball. We're always trying to play catch ups. There are real world solutions that are out there right now that are proven solutions. And people don't need to wait to see the data. I know that the data is starting to come in. I was glad to see the Hurricane Sally University of Alabama report and things like that. The more that we can make people aware of that kind of thing and they can see that, then the more willing they're going to be to invest in this. So.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to a point I wanted to bring up. We recently completed a digital focus group survey with Oklahoma residents, and 87% of those surveyed have not heard of Fortified yet. So how do we increase awareness about Fortified? Places like Alabama, it's taken off in the private market. The awareness is there. But when we're growing it in a new state like Oklahoma, what are some of the strategies behind that? You talked about letting your voice be heard, but, what will it really take to make Fortified a household name like it is in Alabama?
So here's kind of where I am. I feel like a lot of times like a voice crying out in the wilderness. I feel like a one-man band sometimes. But there are a lot of people here that are really committed to and understand the necessity for that. I think that we've got people here who have a pulpit to speak from. I question why we don't have PSAs about Fortified. I question why we don't see more about Fortified in the media. You know, we get the little blurb when OID rolls out a new group of zip codes, or we get a little blurb, you know, about this, that, or the other. But it's not top of mind, certainly, and it's not something you don't see it on buses driving down the street. You don't see any billboards. You don't see any kind of media campaign. And I know in my simple little mind, I think, you know, the two parties who are going to benefit the most from this are going to be the consumers, obviously, and the insurance carriers secondarily. And I don't want to say that the insurance carriers have all the money, but the insurance carriers have money that they could be delivering this message, you know, and I've said this before. Get Patrick Mahomes off of the TV set on all day Saturday and Sunday and have somebody on there talking about what people need to do to save lives and protect property. Okay. Get the little ostrich or emu or whatever it is off of the TV set and have somebody on there talking about real life solutions that people can enact today to save lives and protect property. That's what we're all supposed to be here for. Okay. So that's part of it. I do my radio thing. We have some collaborators in the state. We have Oklahoma Roofing Contractors Association is definitely a collaborator. The Oklahoma Municipal League, I think we've got some other places that we can play to drive that messaging and to really build it. I do a couple of consumer home shows, you know, a couple times a year where, you know, we've got presentations on stage and things like that. But, you know, that's you know, me just doing my part, I guess. But the radio program on Saturday, what we're looking at is really about just educating people about doing something different, and that's what it is. I don't know how you get it to be as successful as it is in Alabama, but that didn't happen overnight either, Rachel. So
Exactly.
we will get there.
Yeah, it takes time, certainly. Another question asked on our survey is, what is the most compelling reason for you to consider investing in a fortified roof? And about 40% of the respondents named peace of mind from having a safer, more resilient home as one of their core motivations. You're already talking about that. And it's interesting to think that many people are on board with that idea that your roof is more about peace of mind than anything else. So, just talk more about that. How do you think these lived experiences play into that decision making? And,
well, they definitely do. And, you know, the fact that people are, you know, we experience the big hail and we experience the tornadoes, you know, almost every single year in Oklahoma. And whether it impacts someone or not, they're still aware of what's going on. And I think that the attitudes that I talk about in terms of the consumer attitudes are definitely changing. I mean, we have people that are now coming to us, as I said, that are asking us, what can we do to do better? How can we do this? And I will tell you that for the first 6, 8, 10 years I was in Oklahoma, I didn't really have that. I think people knew we were doing something a little different, but I don't think they really had the knowledge of what that was and how we were going about it. And I don't think they really understood that, hey, that's what this company is. That's what they do. And we need to go to them and find out how they do it. We're starting to see that now. We can see it in the way that the spread of business that we have. We can see it in where our clients are coming from. We can see it from the price or the size of their roofs and things like that, that they're educating themselves about there's got to be a better way. And so that's all positive. I think for you to say that there's 40% of the people said that would be their number one reason, that's a good number. That's a good starting place, at least.
And then we also looked at some of the most influential barriers that people perceive to installation. So when we asked them, what is the single biggest barrier that would make you hesitate to install a fortified roof, about 48% named the perceived prohibitive upfront costs despite grant programs. So what message do you have about the cost for people?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to do, and maybe this is just me, and maybe there's reasons that it's done the way it is, but I don't believe that the industry or industries are very transparent about what the true cost of doing fortified is. Okay. I think that we tend to, we get an awful lot of people who think that the $10,000 grant is going to pay for their roof. All right. We get a lot of people that are very, very surprised that the $10,000 grant is not even going to be enough to fortify their roof. Okay. And if you take a large home that has to be redecked, it's very conceivable that the $10,000 is eaten up almost in just the redecking portion of it. So I think there is reason for people to be concerned about it, but I think that a lot of the concern comes from a lack of transparency. And I think we could really do a better job of illustrating doing some modeling for them. If you have if you live, and most people don't think in terms of squares like we think of in terms of roof measurement. Most people think in terms of the square footage of their home. So I think what we should do is build some models that say, if you live in a 2,000 square foot or less home, okay, and your home does not need to be redecked, and of course we have to explain what that means, all right, that the $10,000 is probably going to be more than enough to accomplish your fortifications. All right. So I just think there's some modeling that we need to do. I think there's some ways that we need to present this information to people and make it to where it's understandable for them up front. I think another thing that's very misunderstood, we hit on it earlier, was about the evaluators. I think that we should tell people, I believe we tell people that the evaluator fees by and large are less than what they really are. At least it appears that way to me. I think we should really, and I know that IBHS isn't involved in that because there's, there's no price fixing or collusion or anything else, but I think we should be able to give people honest expectations of what an evaluator is going to charge and what he's going to provide for that service. And I think some of the numbers and some of the things that get put out there are either in a social media post or some of the blurbs and things that go out by email blast and things are a little misleading to consumers. So.
Yeah, we certainly know there's a wide range of possible costs depending on the state and the hazards that a home faces and all sorts of different factors. I just have to throw this out there. 17% named the hassle of finding a certified contractor, completing the evaluation process, and managing the project. I take it you have some thoughts on that aspect.
Well, I do have a few thoughts on that. First of all, I'm not sure how hard it is in the context of the grant program to find a certified contractor or certified evaluator. There's a drop down button on the home site they can pick both of those. It's certainly not hard to go to IBHS Fortified and find a certified fortified contractor or fortified evaluator that operates in your state. So I'm not sure why that seems as difficult. I would think the part of it that they're talking about is really the managing the project. I would think that's probably more of that where they're coming in and saying that just seems a little overwhelming or daunting to us. And I think the reality of that is kind of back to where we started with what makes my company different. A lot of roofing contractors in this part of the country fill out an order and send it to distribution, and ABC or SRS or Beacon or QXO, somebody delivers the material to the job site. And lo and behold, a couple of trucks pull up and a dump trailer and guys are on my roof and they're building my roof. And no one from that roofing company is ever on that job. Okay. That is a very, very common occurrence in our part of the country. And so I think what I'm really saying is that consumers need to ask a lot of questions about, number one, the qualifications of their contractor. Now, you've kind of gotten to the point where you know that they're a fortified approved contractor. That tells you a little bit about them. Now you need to get into what's their experience with actually executing fortified projects. You need to get into how do you do this? Who is on site in terms of, do I have a dedicated project manager on site? Even might ask the question about, is that an English speaking project manager who will be on site? Things like that. You want to know what the logistics will be. You want to know how the job will be managed. You want to know how long the job is going to take. You want to know what the process is for making sure that all the documentation is done. Basically, consumers need to quit just taking what the roofing industry or a roofing contractor gives them. And you need to start owning that process. Now, if it's too much for you to do that, I don't expect you to manage your project. But if it's too much for you to do your own due diligence and to ask the right questions, then what you get is going to be what you deserve to get. So,
yeah, I love that philosophy. Going back to comparing it to buying a car, right? I personally want to know the safety rating of my car and how the tires perform and how different elements of the car perform. So, yeah, I think consumers, it would be helpful for them if they thought about their roofs in the same way. So currently there's just over 100 fortified homes in Oklahoma. I want to compare that to Louisiana. This is one of our fastest growing states in the country. In just about 2 years or so, Louisiana has ballooned to more than 10,000 fortified designations. It hasn't taken much time. Yeah. So, how do you think we get there in Oklahoma? What barriers do you think? You've mentioned some of them, but, where do we go from here? What would you like to see the program looking like in Oklahoma 2 years from now?
Well, I think, again, I said, I'd like to see every roof in Oklahoma that gets built being built to this standard. I'd like to see every home being built to a gold standard. It's not going to happen overnight, but it needs to happen eventually. I think that we're getting more and more contractors. Last time I looked, I think we were up to 24 or something like that. So we've got more and more contractors. A lot of those are people who have reached out to me, names that I know, people who are very, very competent and committed to the marketplace and doing what needs to be done here. So I'm excited about that. I think we need to have hundreds of fortified contractors in Oklahoma. Certainly, if we're going to build thousands of roofs, we need to have hundreds of contractors. And that's a role that Oklahoma Roofing Contractors Association and I, as the education chairman, take very seriously. I mean, we want to be making sure that people have the information they need to be able to get engaged in this. We're doing programming right now on code compliant roofing. We'd really like to be able to move into, that fortified part of it and make that part of what Orca could do to be a mouthpiece for IBHS, but we just haven't connected those dots yet. So that's something that hopefully Avery Smith and someone in your organization be able to have those conversations. So,
all right. Any final thoughts or messages before we close out our episode?
Well, it is, it's the same thought over and over again is let's just collaborate. Let's get everyone together. Let's get our carriers and our legislators and regulators. Let's get everybody in the middle. That's the adjusting community and the contracting community. And let's get the consumers and let's all get on the same page. If we will work together, apply common sense solutions to the issue that we have right now, again, we can't make the severe convective storms go away, but we can mitigate risk. We can save lives. We can protect property, and we can all have a brighter tomorrow.
All right. Scott McCollum, Senior of McRoof.us and fortified contractor out of Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your time.
And this has been Disaster Discussions, Calm After the Storm, Growing Fortified in Oklahoma. Thanks for listening to the Disaster Discussions podcast. Join us next month for a new episode. For more on IBHS's ongoing research efforts, visit IBHS.org.